Hey, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones, the host of the State of the Saints podcast. And I have a special guest with me here on the State of the Saints podcast from the NFL Network. We have NFL reporter Steve Wyche. How you doing, Steve?
TJ, I'm great. I just want to let everybody know, man, this is where I've got so much respect for you because you are fearless, right? You follow me on Twitter and you reached out. Hey, man, anybody who does that, I've got time for them, man. Anybody who hustles and grinds and is fearless, man, I'm just so humbled and flattered that you asked me to be on. I'm fired up, man.
I'm fired up too. Thank you so much for being a part of the podcast. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you that we're 13 days away from the NFL season?
400, 500. It's been
a long
wow.
time.
The games. No preseason.
Yeah.
Right. And usually in the summer, and doing what I do, and probably something what you do, we're at facilities. We're covering these guys. We're seeing people face to face. Coaches, GMs, assistant coaches, players. Zoom stuff, man. I'm getting a little tired of it. Let's get to it.
I only can imagine how you all feel. And also, Steve. We didn't even know if we were going to be at this point, especially around the time at the beginning of March. We were just wondering, are we going to even have sports for the rest of the year? And now, it looks like football season is underway in less than 13 days. I love saying that.
I'll tell you what, back in March, though, everybody was thinking it was all going to be good. We're going to have full stadiums because then we're like, okay,
right.
In a couple of weeks, maybe 2 months, the curve will go down.
Right.
We'll figure out how to manage this, even if there's no vaccine. And then, of course, 2 months later, everything went back up, and then we're panicked. So the fact that we're here is a really kind of interesting dynamic. Let's just hope to get that curve pushed down if everybody does what they need to do, so we can get some fans in the stadiums.
Yeah.
By the third or fourth week of the season.
Yeah. So let's all do our part. Make sure that we're wearing our mask and practicing social distancing. That is very, very important. Okay, so we can get back into the stadium and lose our voices cheering for our favorite team. But here on the State of the Saints podcast, our favorite team is the New Orleans Saints. And of course, we're 13 days away, like I said, from the NFL season. But there's a little bit of a monkey wrench. Seems like it's going to be in the plans of the New Orleans Saints, and it involves Alvin Kamara. Now, Alvin Kamara, for the last 3 days, he has not reported to training camp. Now, over the weekend, Coach Sean Payton said he had a little bit of a stomach bug, but now going into the week, he was absent. So according to Adam Schefter, they said that, this is a part of a holdout because he is on the last year of his contract. So Steve, do you see the Saints getting a deal done with Alvin Kamara? Will he be ready for week 1?
Well, he'll be ready if they get it done. And I don't think he'll sit out and miss games because then once you get to that point, you start losing significant paychecks. And things like that. They could fine him right now. Heavily, significant fines. Right. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. But here's why: because with running backs, it's real tricky because some people see the Ezekiel Elliott contracts, the Todd Gurley contracts, and they want those types of numbers. Right. And you just, Derrick Henry got, a certain type, but teams with running backs are like, But with the Saints, I think what Alvin does is so important because of his versatility, his toughness, his ability to catch the ball. It's just so tailor-made for Sean Payton's offense that I think they will get something done. It just is a matter of how much can they get done cap-wise. They're paying Drew Brees, they're paying Cam Jordan, they're paying Michael Thomas a lot of money. Right. How much they can get done, and how it's structured. But I think they'll find at least some type of compromise to get him there for week 1. But this is not what you want to have happen. As you shift into game plan mode and you open your season against Tom Brady and the Buccaneers.
Absolutely. The thing about Alvin Kamara is, a lot of people in Who Dat Nation, they've seen guys that can catch the ball out of the backfield for years. Going back to Darren Sproles. Going back
Pierre
to Reggie
Thomas.
Yeah. So many other players, and they feel like, well, the Saints have done this with all those other players. What makes Alvin Kamara so different? But to me, Steve, I just think that he's just a different type of player. This guy has wide receiver type hands. They talk about how after training camp, after practice is over, he's running routes with wide receivers to try to better his craft at being a route runner. You don't get that, out of most running backs. And not to mention, he can run between the tackles. His rookie season, he averaged 5 yards a carry. His second season, 4.7. Last year, he had a little bit of a drop-off due to injury, so he wasn't, playing at a high level, or he was playing at a pretty high level, but just not up to his standards. So I just don't think that Alvin Kamara grow on trees. You're not going to find it.
Yeah, he's not a dime a dozen player. You don't just replace him. I mean, you can find somebody else and do some different things with him, but he's a special player. And as you mentioned, we know all the dynamic things he can do, especially he's a smaller player, but the power he runs with.
Right.
I mean, he finishes runs like a 230-pound back.
Yeah.
So, again, he is a perfect fit for what they do. And you can't just go ahead and rock with Latavius Murray for 30 touches a game out of the backfield if they think that's going to work. So, it's some clever gamesmanship and timing for him to do this now, but it's a blow. I mean, so I think they'll get something at least to get him into camp and to figure something out so he'll be ready for week 1.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope so. I think that they're going to get something done. I mean, I know before all of this happened, they were talking about his agent and the Saints organization were coming to some type of conclusion about his contract. So hopefully they can get this done by week 1. So he won't be out of this game, which is important to Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And speaking of the Bucs, we know Tom Brady is the brand new quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, spent 20 years in New England. I mean, this is going to look weird just watching him in the Tampa Bay uniform, but he does come to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And as you know, Steve, there were no OTAs, there were no mini camps, there was, nothing, no outside activities for him to get any type of camaraderie or chemistry with his team. So do you think that is going to affect the Tampa Bay Buccaneers early in the season?
Not so much in that way, because look, you've got players who change teams all the time. Right. Quarterbacks change, but like you said, without the OTAs, without things, a lot of the vernacular, and Tom Brady's done the work, but offensive identity, what are they going to be? That's going to be the thing that, where teams like the Saints and the 49ers and the Chiefs have kind of been together, have coaching continuity. Right. Where they're going to be ahead early. So we know Bruce Arians is the king of the 7-step drop, risk it, biscuit. Take that deep shot. And Tom Brady can do that. Yeah. But Tom Brady's also a guy who's seen so much football, right? He sees the field, differently than everyone else. I mean, it's the Rain Man stuff where he's connecting dots all over the place. So how much is he going to be checking down and doing things like this and having that type of communication with his receivers and things like that? So that's where the lack of having just the off season could come back a little bit. I don't think it's going to be significant, right. Especially because he's not going to be dealing with, 68, 70,000 Houdat fans blowing his ears out. So
unfortunately,
right. But, the other thing he's dealing with, in my opinion, is arguably one of, if not the most stacked defenses in the NFL. Marcus Davenport can never stay healthy and get it together. I mean, that defensive front, with Rankins and Owen Mayata and Cam Jordan, if he can get it together, they're good.
Right.
Demario Davis, the most underappreciated player in the NFL, except for the Saints, and that secondary, with Lattimore and Jackrabbit Jenkins.
Right.
They're tough at all levels, and that to me is going to be more of a problem than anything for Tom Brady.
Yeah, I look at the Saints. I feel like they do have an advantage going into week 1, Steve, because of the camaraderie and the chemistry that this team has had over a 3-year span. I think the Saints, they checked the pulse of the climate, so to speak, and they realized that there weren't going to be no OTAs, no minicamp. So they took it upon themselves to sign a lot of guys back to the team that were a part of the team last year. So I feel like with Tom Brady, like you said, he is a seasoned veteran. I mean, he has seen so many different type of schemes. I don't think nothing is going to be new to him. But I do think that the Saints have an advantage because of that chemistry. I mean, Drew Brees can just kind of nod his head and Michael Thomas know how to change his route. I mean, I don't think that Tom Brady would have that type of chemistry early. I do feel like, they're going to be better towards the end of the season, because, I mean, that's when chemistry is starting to start perking up and guys are going to start to understand each other. And I feel like that's where you're going to see the best of the Buccaneers. But I think that the Saints, in my opinion, going to have the advantage due to the fact that they do have that chemistry. Also, the last question about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers I have to ask you, with the New England Patriots, Bill Belichick, he didn't run like the same scheme from week to week like a Bruce Arians would, right? Do you think that's going to affect Tom Brady? I mean, sometimes, Tom Brady would actually be pass dominant in one game. He might throw for 300 yards, and then the next week they might go, against a team where he might throw for 100. But do you think that because Bruce Arians doesn't really run his offense like that, then Tom Brady may have some growing pains in that regard?
No, that's what I think Tom Brady brings to the team.
Right.
Where he may say, "Hey, Bruce, we're playing the Falcons this week. They can't stop the run.
Right.
All right, let's pound this thing. Let's start out early. Let's test him a little bit. Let's open some things up to see if they, we'll give them a nickel-looking formation. Right. They open a nickel. Let's pop it. Let's pound that thing up in there." Right. So, no, I think that's what Tom Brady is going to bring to this offense. And I think Byron Leftwich, having been a longtime NFL quarterback who's the OC, is really going to be a great ear for Bruce Arians because, Byron, wasn't that long ago that he was playing.
Right.
He can be, "Hey, Tom, this is a great game plan. Okay, when we get into the second quarter on this next possession, if we get the ball on this part of the 40-yard line, move it in, here's what I think is going to work based on what we've seen." So, I think that's what Brady coming into veteran leadership, right. Leftwich, a really smart guy who's going to have Arians' ear and be flexible because, "Hey, Bruce, right. Let's try this and let's see if it works." So I think that's going to be a positive for the Buccaneers and their offense.
Right. Well, I say it's going to be an interesting game. I mean, you got two first ballot Hall of Famers going toe to toe. Everybody's looking forward to that matchup in week 1. I want to ask you about some of the protests that were going on. As you know, last week, the Milwaukee Bucks decided to boycott their game against the Orlando Magic due to the shooting of Jacob Blake. A police officer shot him in the back 7 times out in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And last week also, you had some NFL teams that decided to cancel practice because of this. Now, Steve, we all know about how advanced the NBA is when it comes to doing certain things for social justice. Do you ever think that the NFL would ever reach the level that the NBA does when it comes to addressing some of these social justice issues?
It has. See, 4 years ago, when Colin Kaepernick, sat down for the national anthem and then took a knee, and Eric Reed and Eli Harold, and then a handful of other people, Kenny Stills, right. Michael Thomas, the safety, took knees and things like that. They were on an island, man. Right. Nobody else is doing it. And nobody else spoke up for them, especially, the white players. Right. So now 4 years later, after all of these players and people have seen more of this, and then now in the summer, they're at home during COVID, so it's on a constant cycle, right? They don't have football practice to take them away. Right. They don't have other things to distract them. They're at home, so they're seeing it. Right. It seems like it's really registered. And then the fact now that you have Brian Flores and Sean Payton come out, right? They're the Steve Kerr and Greg Popovich when it comes to coaches of the NFL. Right. So it seems now, you talk about these players missing practices, and people are saying, well, what does missing a practice do? One, coaches now are more in tune with their players. If there's players' heads aren't into it, and if they say, damn it, go play football, go practice football, I don't really care about your feelings, those players are going to revolt, right? Players were not that bold before. They were afraid of getting cut. Right. Remember, NBA contracts are guaranteed. Major League Baseball contracts are guaranteed. NFL, they are not guaranteed. Yep. But now the players, and seeing what the WNBA and NBA and MLS and all these guys have done, are saying, wait a second. If they suspend one of us, they're going to have to spend, let's say 46 of us on this 53-man roster because we're have fun playing that ball game. What's going to happen? We forfeit. Sorry. Right. Too bad. So they're starting to understand, and this is something that people from Jim Brown and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and people back in the 60s were saying, if athletes realize their overall power and united behind a cause, right. This is the power they have. So they're understanding that. The thing that was a little disheartening last week, Patriot safety Devin McCourty, and you've heard some NBA players say this. So we've been in the streets all summer. Right. We've been protesting. We've worked with police officers and legislators, and we're still having unarmed people getting killed by police officers. What's the use? They've got to understand that this is a long play. As much as you want immediate change, and all of us want immediate change. Yeah. An athlete not playing a basketball game or skipping practice, right? So their parents. So when the Milwaukee Bucks are supposed to play the Magic, well, the fans of the Bucks kids might say, "Dad, how come they're not playing tonight?"
Right.
Well, that father's got to explain to that 10-year-old or that 11-year-old, this is why. Now, he could say whatever direction, but that is going to shape a different perspective of that young person than they may have ever had if this didn't happen. Right. So that's what I'm saying. It is more of a long play that people have to see while we're hoping for more short-term results.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think about that historical picture that back in the 60s where they had Jim Brown, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and so many other, Muhammad Ali, so many other famous African-American athletes. And, they were all together collectively, taking a stand. And that picture, was a picture that really spoke volumes. But the thing about this is these athletes today actually have a bigger platform because they got the power of social media now. I mean, one tweet, can go get retweeted over and over again, and that message gets put out there. And also, like you see, most athletes like LeBron James, George Hill, as of right now, Giannis, and so many NFL players. These guys are on the forefront and willing to miss a paycheck in order to create change in this world. And I mean, that is commendable. And also, another player, that I want to talk about, Malcolm Jenkins, who plays for the New Orleans Saints. Not only is he the safety of the New Orleans Saints, but a CNN correspondent, but he is back with the New Orleans Saints for the second time around. And as you know, Steve, I mean, the Saints have given up some huge plays in the secondary over the past 3 years. I mean, a Minneapolis miracle. We know about the Kyle Rudolph catch at the back in the end zone in overtime. I mean, the list goes on and on. What can Malcolm Jenkins bring to the secondary that has been missing from the New Orleans Saints over the past 3 years?
Well, from everyone you talk to, it sounds more so than anything communication. Right. Because he's a great leader. He's somebody who, look, and you would talk to any defensive coordinator, secondary coach, communication is everything. Right. You've got fast guys back there. You've got cover guys. You got guys who come up and strike. But if a team comes out in a formation that they hadn't seen before and they really stress your defensive principles, that communication is everything. So that's what Malcolm Jenkins brings. The Eagles used him a certain way where he played very well. Right. We know with the Saints had a really good player in Von Bell, who's now with the Bengals. I mean, he's a good player, but he was kind of restrictive in what he was more of an in-the-box guy, forced a lot of fumbles. Right. So maybe there were some things defensively they couldn't do. And plus, they couldn't settle a corner opposite Marshawn Lattimore. Jack Rabbit Jenkins is going to do that. He's a good player. Yeah. He's just played on some losing teams. So I think being in this environment will be very healthy for him. Yeah. So, again, that's why I'm saying, though, if Marcus Davenport could ever figure it out, if he can ever stay healthy with his ability, I mean, if they can get after the quarterback, which they're going to have to do in this division, it's going to be a lot easier for those guys in the back end.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you look at somebody like Marcus Davenport. I mean, he flashes. He definitely shows flashes. I remember a game, I think it was Sunday night against the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, he took over that game. I mean, he was all. You would think that he was Dalvin Cook the way he was in that backfield. I mean, he was all over the field in a game. Also on Monday night against the Washington Redskins. So, like you say, if the light ever comes on for him, I mean, the NFL is going to have to look out. But I think Malcolm Jenkins is that key. That key part that was missing from the New Orleans Saints when it comes to his leadership and understanding different offenses and stuff. And also, I think somebody like Marcus Williams will be able to learn from him, and maybe Malcolm Jenkins become a mentor to him, and maybe he can live. I mean, he does a good job, but there's still certain parts of Marcus Williams that needs to get a little bit better. And I think because of the leadership of Malcolm Jenkins, I think he'll reach that level. But I mean, we know that Malcolm Jenkins is a leader, but we have to talk about the undisputed leader of the New Orleans Saints. That's Drew Brees. Drew Brees in the offseason. I mean, everybody thought that he was going to come back, but he did contemplate retirement. He did decide to come back for another season with the New Orleans Saints. He got a 2-year deal with them. My question is to you, Steve, do you think that this is Drew Brees' final season?
Hard to say. Hard to say, but I think it depends on how things play out. But no one's going to be surprised if it is. I mean, like you said, Drew contemplated it. He had the episode this summer that brought a lot of backlash from him, other players around the NFL.
Right.
He's made some amends, apologized, and most people seem to have accepted his apologies.
Right.
But I think it just all depends. I mean, they've had their guts ripped out in the playoffs the last 3 years. I mean, the one last season was just because they were not mentally ready. They didn't think Minnesota was going to come down and put it on them like they did, and they got caught.
That's true.
So, I mean, I think this is one reason why they loaded up, why they go out and they get Emmanuel Sanders to help out on the offense, and why Sean Payton said at the beginning of this COVID stuff, don't even bother with a lot of the workout. Just get your minds right, and then let's come back in time and play like we need to play. So, again, think about it, man. We could have Breeze, Brady, Phillip Rivers. I don't think Aaron Rodgers or Ben Roethlisberger are retiring, but at least 3 first ballot Hall of Famers. Well, I don't know if Phillip's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but all these guys retiring at the same time.
Right.
Which is why Jameis Winston made a great move.
Yeah.
Coming to New Orleans, learning under Drew Brees, because people will tell you, guys will tell you who've been, in that quarterback room with Drew Brees, no one prepares like him. And the stuff, Chase Daniels, the way I learned how to prepare under Drew Brees is contagious. So now he can take that to wherever he's been. So Jameis learns that. Drew comes back. Jameis pulls a Teddy Bridgewater. So maybe, he's in Indianapolis or one of these teams where there's a void at quarterback. Because the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to lose some great ones. But at the same time, I think the NFL is in great hands with these young quarterbacks, with guys like, Pat Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, Kyler Murray, players like that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I look at somebody like Jameis Winston. I think he called up Teddy Bridgewater before he made his decision, and Teddy talked to him about him playing for the Saints and how that helped him. And I mean, look at Teddy Bridgewater now; he's making about $60 million out Carolina. So I think Jameis Winston did make a good move. But I do want to ask you about Jameis Winston since we're talking about him. Do you think that the Saints actually signed him for just for a short time, try to get Taysom Hill maybe to be Drew Brees' successor? Or do you believe that the Saints actually signed him to give him a legitimate shot once Drew Brees retires?
I think they give him a legitimate shot. I mean, Sean Payton's not going to sign a backup quarterback who he doesn't think can win him games.
Right.
And I think having faced Jameis for 5 years, he sees the talent.
Right. It's
just been unbridled. I mean, no one's been able to stop him from trying to do miraculous things, which leads to the darn interceptions. Well, so now he's coming to a system where, hey, we're going to take our shots. We're going to nickel and dime you. We're just going to out-scheme the hell out of almost everyone we play.
Right.
So if they can take that pressure off of Jameis, maybe he can, because his talent, no one's going to question that. Right. It's just the decision-making. So I think this could really, really help. Not saying he didn't get coaching under Bruce Arians.
Right.
He just felt he's got something in his psyche all the way back to Florida State that he has to do everything.
Yeah.
And if Sean Payton can get him to step back from that a little bit, he could really become an excellent player.
Yeah, I mean, but do you think that Jameis Winston suffered in Tampa because of a lack of a running game? Like when he first got there, I mean, they had Doug Martin. But after Doug Martin, I mean, there has not really been a consistent running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So do you think that has something to do with it? And do you think because Sean Payton, I mean, the Saints throw the ball quite a bit, but they do run the ball, more than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Do you think maybe, the no risk and no biscuit type mentality, that Bruce Arians had kind of caused Jameis Winston to be exposed as a quarterback? And do you think that maybe Sean Payton can kind of, buckle him down a little bit with some of those close intermediate throws? Do you think that might help also with a running game?
I mean, being balanced always helps, but Aaron Rodgers has never had commitment to the running game. I mean, he's that player. I mean, there are quarterbacks who've been on teams where there's not the commitment to the running game. You're seeing more and more of it. As much as this is a throwing league, I mean, the San Francisco 49ers, they run the ball. Seattle Seahawks run the ball.
Right.
And you're seeing those teams do more. Like now the 49ers, they don't run the ball.
Right.
Not the 49ers, sorry, the Kansas City Chiefs don't run the ball. But they use short passing. They don't. That's Andy Reid, but he's used the short passing game as his run game.
Yeah.
So There's just different methodologies based on your personnel and philosophy. So I'm not going to give Jameis the excuse of saying it's okay to throw 30 interceptions because we can't run the ball. There's no excuse for that. I mean, in no way, shape, or form. If you don't throw all these pick sixes, then maybe we can be up by 10, and then maybe we can pound the football.
Right.
And that'll make things a little bit easier for you.
Good point. Good point. I never even thought about that. But before you go, I have to ask you about this. Over the weekend, we lost Black Panther star and your fellow Howard University Bison, Chadwick Boseman. I just wanted to know how do you feeling right now, over the tragic loss of Chadwick Boseman?
Well, I'm sick over that, but it's not just him. I mean, you think about what's going on this year from Kobe to so many, and then, and just in the world of sports, we've lost, Lute Olson, the head basketball coach at Arizona, who was a legend, and then John Thompson.
Wow.
You talk about molders of men for the long term. I mean, Lute Olson's a guy who coached Steve Kerr, and then John Thompson. I grew up watching Georgetown. I never heard of Georgetown growing up in Missouri. And then all of a sudden I see this basketball team that's all black, coaching staff. The only white person was the nun on the bench, and John Thompson, who just really created great men. And someone who's covered the NBA and become friends with Patrick Ewing and Alonzo Mourning and a lot of the people that John coached and doing stuff with John in the media up in DC. Right. It's gutting. But to get back to Chadwick Boseman, the reason why this hurts so much is, one, because he's so young. Yeah. But the roles he played were all of legends. Right. Thurgood Marshall, the first Black Supreme Court Justice, Jackie Robinson, as we know his history, in breaking the color barrier in Major League Baseball, and then as a superhero king. Yeah. For black people, white people, they hadn't seen that before, and for him to do it with such distinction, for us to always want to see more of him and thinking he's indestructible, and then having this cancer take him away at the age of 43, it's gutting. I mean, it's horrible. It is a blow for the culture and for so many other reasons. You just feel horrible for his wife, for a lot of people who. Granted, for 43 years, they got to see and know and learn about the man, but it seems like he had 43 more years left to make us all better people. So really, really tough.
Yeah, I mean, the world is definitely going to miss Chadwick Boseman. And I just think about the fact that he was diagnosed back in 2016, and he didn't make an excuse at all. I mean, he continued to work, do these movies. You never heard him complain. I mean, that's why it's so tragic. I mean, nobody knew, about, what he was going through. So even though, he played King T'Challa on the Black Panther as a superhero, he was a superhero in real life because, that warrior spirit that he showed, 12, 18 hours a day, filming those movies and going through what he was going through. I mean, he's a superhero in real life in my book.
Yeah, and let you know, man, make no excuses. You never know what somebody's going through. Yeah. But for someone to fight through and to persevere like that, just no. Put it to you this way: there's no excuses to be a crappy person.
Yep.
You know what? Don't wake up in the mirror and wake up every day, look in the mirror, and say, you know what? I'm not going to have a good day. Yeah, because you just never know.
Yep. And that's why, I always say, I try to live every day like it's my last day, and no matter how bad your day was on yesterday, when you wake up in the morning and your eyes fly open and you see a brand new day, I mean, just, constantly try to work to leave your mark in this world. Chadwick Boseman definitely did. But Steve Wyche, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. And before you go, and you let everyone know how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, look, on Twitter and Instagram, simple handle at Wyche, WYCHE 89, at Wyche 89. You can find me like you did. And, I respond because it is, as I have said before, it is my duty to lead, but it is my responsibility to listen and to help to the young people trying to make a place in this world. So I'm here for you.
Yeah, thank you. And speaking of listen, I know you were talking about your new podcast that you have coming up September the 8th. Can you tell us about that before you go?
Yeah, hey man, I'm going to join you in the podcast game. September 8th, my colleague Jim Trotter, one of the most respected people in the media when it comes to covering the NFL. We're both Howard University graduates. We have more than 40 years covering the NFL. We are dropping the Huddle and Flow podcast. First off, as I said, an emoji. If the 100 emoji had a name, this is it. It's very real. It's going to be a very honest podcast. We are going to talk football, but we're going to talk football issues, life issues, health issues, cultural issues, and we are going to constantly be banging the drums for HBCU products, HBCUs, and for everything HBCUs have contributed to this great country.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad to hear that as a fellow HBCU graduate. I graduated from Jackson State University, so I'm definitely loving that. And we're going to be loving to hear from you. And I'm Jim Trotter on your podcast. And once again, Steve, thank you very much for your time and being a part of the State of the Saints podcast.
Hey, appreciate you having me, man.
All right, take care.